What's going on, everybody? Welcome to FlexRx episode 13. We are on episode 13. I was away last week, but we are back on it. I was in Austin, Texas last week. Good times. I wish, coming out of there, my one wish is I wish we had more kavas in New Jersey. Because kava's delicious, and they got their new steak, and that was awesome. So we did Sweet Green, kava. I love all the Austin kind of fast food spots or franchises like Hop Dotty, Torchy's, and of course, in Texas, I love Buc-ee's. But we're going to be getting into the topic for today. Welcome, everybody. We got Instagram here. We got LinkedIn here. We got YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook. Everybody's in the house. But today's topic for episode 13, we're going to be talking about how can you make more gains in less time, spend less time in the gym, but get more returns on building muscle, which also, if your body is utilizing more calories for building muscle, you tend to lose more fat too along the way, if that is your goal, if you're at calorie maintenance, if you're in a calorie deficit. So I got 4 big pieces as to how we can build more muscle in less time that you guys can use. If you have any questions, if you're streaming this, especially if you're streaming from YouTube, LinkedIn, or Facebook, ask away some questions so we can get these going for after the topic. But so the topic today is going to be more gains in less time. And now, why is this important? Or how did I learn these things? So for me, back in college and high school, I had all the time in the world. I was doing oftentimes 2.5, 3 hour long training sessions. I was doing powerlifting back in college, back at Rutgers, co-founded the Rutgers powerlifting team. And when it was class time, sometimes maybe a little bit late to lecture or something, but I would get my workouts done. And then I would go over to the dining hall where I have unlimited grilled chicken breasts. So my protein was hit, didn't have to cook. So, it was good times. But when I got into actual, reality kind of set in, or what real adulting kind of is going to look like when I got into pharmacy school rotations. So back in Rutgers, I was a pharmacy student, and then getting into, completing that year 6 out of the 6-year program. That's when we got out of the classroom and where we had to pretty much pay tuition to work 40-hour work weeks as a rotation student. So you would go to, I think there was 8 or 9 different rotations, and I was at hospitals for 4 or 5 weeks at a time. And then they move you kind of to different places. So you can kind of gain experience while also not being on kind of payroll. You're kind of paying to work. But that's where kind of reality settled in. So at this time, I was working, as a rotation student. So we had pretty much 8-hour work days, and then plus commutes. So a normal 40-hour a week work week, or 40 to 50 hours. On top of that, I was building my coaching business. So I was working 10 to 20 hours coaching people. I think I had 50 clients at the time. And on top of that, I was doing social media stuff. So I think I was doing weekly vlogs back in those times on YouTube, doing my own editing and stuff. So that was another 10 hours. And I was also posting 2 to 3 times a day on Instagram. So it was just a lot of hours. So I was probably working those 60, 70-hour work weeks. I also had another failed business at the time. I was doing apparel as well. If anyone remembers Buff Penguin. So I had to learn how to get more efficient because I didn't have 3 hours a day to work out anymore. And I didn't have all-you-can-eat chicken breast and food already prepped for me where I just walk into the dining hall. So what happened at this time is I had to get more efficient. Like many people out there, you may be watching, and you're like, okay, I can't resonate with somebody who is I guess now I'm a fitness influencer, I guess you could call me. But you may not have all the time in the world to train. You may not have time for 3-hour sessions. You may have to, cook your own meals, get your work done, do your commutes. So what I want to help you today is going to be, with the same amount of time spent in the gym, how do you get more gains in less time? So I got 3 or 4 main topics that I'm going to be covering to help you with that. And so make more gains in less time. The number one thing, so the first thing we can do here in the gym is leverage supersets. So we can leverage supersets. What is a superset? So that's pretty much where you're going to do antagonist muscle groups, or you're just going to pretty much do exercise. You do a set of an exercise, then another exercise, then rest. Instead of exercise set, rest, set, rest. This one is going to allow you to do, let's say, like an example here would be you're going to do some bicep curls. So set of curls, then directly to tricep extensions, and then you take your rest, then rest. So pretty much what this is going to do is by doing this, instead of taking, it's kind of, you're going to be able to add, I don't know, what is this, 50% more volume or 30% more volume? I can't do the math off the top of my head, but you're going to be able to do a set, and then you do your rest. Actually, you pretty much double your volume, but there's a whole other thing with time. But so you're going to be able to do a curl set, you're going to be able to do tricep set before you actually take a short rest period. Because when your biceps are recovering after you pretty much toast your biceps, your triceps are fresh because they're antagonist muscle groups. They're not overlapping. So this is going to allow you to get more volume in the same amount of time. I use this with a lot of my workouts. So instead, if like you do, bicep curls, I'm going to hit those. Now I'm going to wait 1 to 2 minutes. Then I do my next set, then wait 1 to 2 minutes. At least in this case, you're going to be able to do your set, allow your biceps to recover while you do your triceps. And then you can take probably a shorter break just to catch your breath a little bit, like cardiovascularly catch your breath. And this has been shown to actually like not decrease really the effectiveness of our workouts. I guess I would probably argue like, if all needed be and I had to get the best curl workout of my life, I'd probably do a set of curls and then I'd probably wait 5 minutes between that and my next set. So there may be a small trade-off there, but you're going to be able to pack a lot more volume per minute by leveraging supersets. So what my workouts look like is usually 4 supersets, and you want to pair this up with exercises that don't overlap. So if you were doing something of like bench press and then chest flies, you're doing chest and then chest. So your chest doesn't get to like recover, and then give its best effort. It's just getting, double punished. That's more like a drop set. So what you want to do here is you would do like a chest and a back exercise. So like maybe you're going to do dumbbell press, and then you're going to superset that with like maybe a seal row or a rowing movement. So now once you do your chest movement, now your chest is pretty much beat. It's recovering while you do your pulling movement. And then you can take a shorter break, catch your breath, and then you can go back in. So you're going to be able to get more done than if you had 8 separate exercises and you just had, that would be, let's say, 4 sets per exercise. You're going to have 32 rest breaks, or if it's just the in-betweens, you're going to have like 24 rest periods. So it's going to help you be a little bit more efficient there. This has been really useful for me. Just, again, I'm getting more volume in the same allotted, let's say, hour and a half or 2 hours in the gym. I'm able to get a lot more done this way, and you get a really, really good pump. And so that's some of the examples here. I would say that this is less well suited if you are doing something like, if you're doing heavy compound movements, don't superset well. But I would say big compound, we're going to go with that, plus like isolation movement does work well, isolation movement. So what that would be is I like doing this. So here's some examples of how I use supersets. So I said pushes and pulls. It's upper body. It's not super systemically fatiguing. I'm not super out of breath from like a set of chest presses, rather than if you compare that with like a set of barbell squats to failure. Like you're going to feel that in your soul, and like you're really going to want 3 to 5 minutes to catch your breath. So in these cases, I think of like an upper body exercise, more of a moderate. So I can do like a press and a pull, and I can pretty much superset that pretty effectively. On the flip side, for legs, I'm probably not going to do like a deadlift and a squat superset. There's some overlapping lower back and stuff, and the muscles that keep us upright, they're going to be kind of overlapping, but also they're just very, very systemically fatigued movements. And you're going to want like a lot of time between those to catch your breath. So what I would do in these cases is I would pair up with my squats to bicep curls. So while I'm catching my breath, I can hit a set of curls. That's going to be not super cardiovascularly taxing. It's going to be able to catch my breath a little bit beforehand. Then my legs are going to be able to catch up, and then I'm able to go into the next one. So sometimes I'll do a big compound with like an arm or like a lateral raise or a tricep type exercise. So that's what I do. If you want to get, more volume and less time in the gym, I would definitely start with supersets. I would think that's a really good way to like pair up exercises in your routine and then you can kind of condense your total rest periods. Number two, the second way that I would focus on getting more gains in less time is I'd focus on compound movements. So compound movements. And what are compound movements? These are just movements, or let's put them as exercises that engage more than one muscle group, pretty much. So it's compound. It's going to be multiple kind of, it could be multi-joints. It could just be, multiple kind of muscle groups. So an example here of like what would be like a compound movement versus like a non-compound movement. This should be like if you do a chest fly, you're just pretty much hitting your chest, just your chest. But if you do a press, now you're involving, your anterior delt is going to get stretched here. And also you have your tricep that also gets involved in the press. So you're hitting your chest along with a little bit of seasoning on your triceps and your shoulders. So now you kind of got, primary mover is going to be your chest, your pecs, but now you're adding in a little bit of seasoning onto your triceps and shoulders. If you're just doing, chest flies for, your workouts, then you're going to want to hit like probably an anterior delt raise, or you're going to add a separate, tricep extension, rather than if you're using more of these compound movements, you're going to be able to move more weight, and you're going to incorporate or engage more muscles to move that greater weight. So this can be just from like a training structure. If you're focusing on more of these compound movements, if you have just limited time, this could be very helpful. So some examples here is like also like a squat. Squats aren't just going to hit your quads or they just hit your glutes. Like if you're doing your whole leg days, like leg extensions, which just hit your quads, and then you're going to do, some leg curls, which will just probably hit your hamstrings. And then you're going to go and do, like a glute kickback, which is just going to hit your glutes. You could probably get a lot more out of doing some squats, which will hit your quads and glutes, and then like an RDL. And you're probably going to get, instead of those 3 exercises you did, you'll probably get some more growth from these, 2 movements. Like an RDL, probably hamstrings and glute. Squats, depending on your biomechanics, typically is going to be quads and your glutes. So by focusing and doubling down on compound movements, just getting really strong, you can simplify a lot of fluff in your workouts too. And here's another piece. Let's say that you're doing just flies and I forgot what these are called, but like they're kind of pull downs. So pull downs for like your lats. You're doing that on like a cable stack. So you're just pretty much hitting your lats. So pull downs, not like a lat pull down, but separate. But if you're just doing these pull downs, you're just hitting your lats. There's really nothing else getting used. If you're just doing flies, really nothing else but your chest is being used. If you compare that with like doing presses and pulls, your presses are going to, again, now you hit some of your shoulders, you're going to hit your triceps as well. And your pulls are now going to incorporate your biceps as well along the way as you do these movements. So you're getting that extra seasoning while still the limiting factor being that primary mover, that primary target. So I would focus on, and if I want to make more gains in less time, getting super strong at compound movements in the gym. So I'd probably simplify my training a little bit and just really double down on getting a really strong squat, really strong press, really strong pull. And then if you're stronger, it keeps your stuff simple. You don't have to go in and do 16 different exercises and run around the gym the entire time. Because also there's something to simplicity when you're not running around the gym for multiple different exercises. And now, number 3, if we want to be more efficient in the gym, get more gains for our time, number 3 thing we can do is going to be train with intensity. And so this has been shown, more recently, it's been a very popular topic, but like you can throw a ton of volume at your muscles and get some growth, but that's almost always going to perform better when you're making sure that you're training with the quality, that intensity. But what is intensity? So intensity is just pretty much how close to failure are you training? Pretty much how hard are you training? And I feel like this is the number one thing. This is the number one thing that holds people back from actual making gains in the gym. Like you'll hear all the time, oh, I'm in the gym 4 times, 5 times a week. And my conversation is like, I look nothing like you. You have lucky genetics. Or, wow, I've trained, 4 times, 5 times a week for like 5 years, but I can't, seem to make much progress. It's almost always training intensity. And if I could just like kind of give you guys a little story of like what kind of shows the lack of training intensity for a lot of people, is when people, it's a big milestone on bench press, barbell bench press. You add a 45 to the sides, and it's like, that's a big moment. Like when you add your first 45 to the sides on bench press, absolutely huge. But then I see that same person every training session just slap on the same 45s and do the same amount of reps with that same just 45-pound plates. Or somebody will hit 225 on bench. That's 2 plates on each side. And then every time they go into the gym, they're like, they do that for a single and they're like, still got it. And then they just do the same. They drop it down. They do the same rep work every time. Rather than them looking to hit 2 reps this time. Or rather than adding those little 2.5-pound plates on the side. And this frustrates me. We have such beautiful stuff in 2024. We have all this opportunity in terms of like our training equipment, but people don't use those little tiny plates to make their bench max go from 225 to 230, or make their sets of 5 go from 235 to 240. And those are the little gains that lead to big gains over the long term. It's these little wins. So use those 2.5-pound plates. Allow your PRs to build up over time. And that's going to be where you really get those big heaps of progress over the long term. It's never a surprise when you hit a 50-pound PR. It's hundreds of little 5-pound PRs along the way. And, Desmond knows what's up. Yep, add a 5-pound plate here and there, slowly build up. That's what I'm talking about. But some people just get married to the same 135 on the bar, the same 2 plates. Maybe it's 185 for some people. Where it's like, 1 plate and I'll throw on the 25. But they just marry that weight and they just keep doing the same thing. So enough of that. Enough of me ranting. So train with intensity. So if you are training hard enough, if you are pushing your limits, if you're training close to failure being when you cannot do any more reps, if you get the 135 pounds on the bar and you can do 10 reps and you stop at 5, you're not training with much intensity. You left 5 reps in the tank. If you can do 10 reps and you hit 9 reps or 10 reps, that's sufficient intensity. That's where you're pushing yourself. That's where you're testing your limits. And so what tends to happen when you train with more intensity? 1, you tend to grow. You tend to grow regardless because you're just training hard. And then when if you have a constant for training hard and your capabilities are improving or increasing over time, you actually keep getting better. And that's kind of like how you progressive overload. That's why it works. So you tend to grow, 1, and that is with, because also, what some people do is just throw a ton of volume at it. You can do a ton of volume training in the gym to have 2-hour training sessions, just throwing a ton of volume at your muscles. And yes, you will grow pretty well. Volume is definitely a piece of the equation. But if you want to grow more from that same volume, train with intensity. Make those sets that you're doing, make sure that they're sufficient intensity or close to failure. You can grow while throwing a lot of volume at a muscle and still being reasonably far from failure. Or you can take a lot of those sets to failure, be very difficult. That's where you're going to be making a lot of gains as well. So if the volume is equal, you're going to grow more having that volume be intense. Now, on the flip side, you'll even grow with less volume. So if we have these things, we have this less intense volume. Now we bring high intensity, but we decrease that volume. You're going to be able to get the same amount of gains with a little bit less volume. So very important. And if I just want to simplify this tip, beat the logbook. Because again, when you have a constant of training towards your limit, that's going to push your limit. And then when you allow yourself to recover from pushing your limit, the limit has already increased. But if we make it a standard to train towards our limit, that means if our limit's here and we're training up to it, that's our performance. Now we've pushed our limit, the limit has increased, and we've made it a standard that we hit the limit. That's how you're slowly going to be climbing over time. But if we're always sandbagging, if we're always leaving 5 reps in the tank, you're not really pushing this limit anymore because you're just constantly being below what is necessary or what is needed. So at the end of the day, train with sufficient intensity, and be that if you add some more volume, be it if you decrease your volume, you're going to see better gains per set. Shout out to Greg, the Elon and Yumi Tree Fund. Thank you, Greg. You don't have to You don't have to do it, but I appreciate it every time, Greg. Thank you. Now, number 4, in terms of getting more gains with less time in the gym, the fourth one is going to be a little bit different because I know a lot of people here are busy professionals, working 40, 50, 60-hour work weeks. You don't have the time for the gym. In the 168 hours, you just don't have the time, or it's hard to make the time. It's scheduling. And I'm going to tackle this with like 2 big pieces, and this is where this has helped me. So to start, in terms of scheduling, what I mentioned earlier is at this time of my life, when I was in pharmacy school rotations, I had a coaching business with 50 clients. I had a failing apparel business. I was doing 40 plus hours of pharmacy school rotations, and I was posting 2 to 3 times on Instagram and vlogging on a weekly basis and editing that myself. So I was busy too. And what worked very well for me is getting in the gym. So in the gym when less people are. So for me, that was 4 a.m. or let's say 5 a.m. So I would train 5 to 7 a.m. and then I'm able to get to, where I got to go, be that a long commute or whatever. I'm there at 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. and I'm good. Or what you can do, because not everybody is going to be like me and say like, I want to do, the 10 alarm strategy and get up at 4 a.m., 4:15 a.m. Your strategy may be the 8 p.m. There's typically less people at 8 p.m. than there is at noon or 5 p.m. I'd say the danger zone, so let's put DZ, it's probably going to be in that like, I haven't been there so much, but like 3 to like 7 p.m., probably more specifically 4 to 6 is going to be really rough. But if you avoid those hours, you can tend to get more done because you have to dodge less people. There's less waiting for equipment. You're able to get through your workout a lot more seamlessly. So I'd recommend go at the dead times. Why are those times dead? Why are less people there? Because it's less desirable to be there. It's supply and demand, baby. So if like there's not a lot of people in the gym at 5 a.m. because it sucks to be there, then that's the hard work to be done to get. That's the cost of doing business to have an empty gym to train at. Get up early because it sucks. So less people do it. So that's why I do it, because there's less people to kind of walk around, be in the way of, etc. But if you don't want to do that, for every getcha, there's a gotcha. For every decision, there's a cost. And so if you just want to roll into the gym after work, a lot of people like doing that strategy. They want to finish up their work and they want to just go straight to the gym because they want to get it all done in one shot, which I do as well. If like back in the rotation days, I would go train, and then I go straight to the gym, and then I go straight home. Some people like to get up, go to work, and then go straight to the gym. But a lot of people make that decision. So that cost is you're going to have a more packed gym, and it's going to be a little bit of a party. But if you're a social kind of person and you like, making new friends, like all the power to you. I'm kind of a selective extrovert, introvert. It really depends. I don't really know what I'm diagnosed if I'm an extrovert or introvert. But that all being said, be strategic with the times you go. The second piece is going to be calendar. So schedule it in. And this kind of plays synergistically. Like when there's a time where you feel you can be more, dialed in the gym, you can get your work done a lot quicker, then maybe block that in your calendar so you have a visual reminder, or, use the weekends. The weekend mornings tend to be a little bit less. A lot of people will train, actually, I don't really even know, honestly. Like I just like I'm in there every morning and like it's pretty dead around 5 a.m. It's pretty dead at 6 a.m. on the weekends. And so maybe you just find those times that are a little bit quieter that's realistic for you. And then those is probably going to be the times to go in there to make sure you can get more gains in less time, get more volume done in less time. So that is the topic for today. We talked about making more gains in less time and how to make that realistic over the long term so you can get super jacked, get bigger than me, and then you can be, the best coach ever. But bring it on. So that's going to be the top 4. Use supersets in the gym. 2, compound movements. Focus and prioritize on those. Train with sufficient intensity. Train hard in the gym. And 4, use scheduling to your advantage. Be in the gym at dead times so you have less people to dodge. And then also schedule it in, use your calendar so you can be effective and efficient. So that is the topic that we prepared for today. Now let's get into some of these questions for this week. All right, shout out to Greg. I know carbs don't make you fat. It's calories in versus calories out. But I heard someone say there were studies relating to carbs and body composition. Do you find carbs affect body composition in the long term? Yes. So I would say in this case, there is a difference, but it's its magnitudes less important than it is just calories and protein. So there are studies to show that. So let's go fat versus carbs, the debate. And so generally, far and away, calories and protein are the most important thing to focus on. Like, unless you're really in the weeds, getting pretty advanced, I'd say like this is what you want to focus on. Just like hit your calories, hit your protein, and you're going to see consistent, weight loss. You're going to see things move in the right direction if you just focus on those and kind of how your weight's moving. Sarah and Larry, what's the most calories you can cut on a cut for 170 pounds? What's the most calories? I mean, someone can probably lose weight at 5,000 calories per day at at 170. But yeah, you could probably lose weight eating 5,000 calories per day, but you probably have to run 40 miles every day. Some people have probably done it. So it really depends. So that's why I can't just answer that, what's the most that someone can cut on. It's going to be person by person specific. But let me answer this question, and then I'll dial into some of those. But far and away, fats versus carbs. Far and away, the most important thing for improving your body composition is focus on calories and protein. Because, if you're in a calorie deficit, you're going to lose weight. If you're getting sufficient protein in, then that's going to mean, some of that calories you're consuming can be used towards repairing your muscle, building muscle, and then there's less kind of calories for fat regulation. So you lose more fat, you gain more muscle. Now, if you really want to get in the weeds, having a bias towards higher carbs relative to fat is beneficial to muscle growth. So if we really want to optimize things, I would recommend going with higher carbs relative to fat. So kind of if we really go into it, so, fats, good for your hormones, but you don't get a bonus by over consuming those. If maybe 50 to 60 grams of fat is, fine for you to regulate your hormones, have enough testosterone, et cetera, but you don't really get a bonus by having the majority of your surplus calories or higher calories as fats. But when we think about carbs, these is the literal fuel for your training. So we use glucose for intense training. Fats, anything, faster than brisk walking is going to be fueled by carbs. So that's going to be your pressing, your pulls, like your strength movements, your sprinting, your running ultimately. Carbs is going to be your primary fuel for training, your glycogen, glucose, all that stuff. So having that is going to be useful for training. If you're very limited on carbs and you don't have any carbs to fuel your training, you're going to rely on something that's just going to be a subpar fuel relative to carbs. So fuel for your training. There's also, in terms of glycogen, you get bonus. It's an anabolic signaler for your body to have full glycogen stores when it knows that it's overfed in those cases, or you're maintaining high glycogen stores, so carbs stored in your muscles. That tends to yield, additional benefits for just signaling more growth. And then in terms of a high consumption piece, we can even talk about insulin. So insulin, when you consume carbs, it's going to be stimulus, which is actually anti-catabolic, so anti-muscle breakdown, or it's an anabolic signaler. So by having carbs, it signals insulin to be secreted, which then pulls carbs from the bloodstream and stimulates us to store those calories in cells. So that's what insulin does. It helps us pull carbs from the bloodstream into the cells. And that's why also, because we can make an argument, on the extreme levels is bodybuilders. So bodybuilders supplement it. So in non-drug tested federations, this is actually arguably one of the reasons that, bodybuilders have just gotten so huge. It's from insulin supplementation. And so for all these reasons, having, if you're in a calorie surplus, it's worth going higher carbs relative to fats because you get kind of those benefits. And then on a final note as well, in terms of dieting and I bias higher carbs when I'm dieting too. So you retain. So here's one thing. So when you're dieting, you're going to get flat because your glycogen is going to be probably lower when you're deep into the deficit. So you get pretty flat in the muscles. And so what's going to be useful for you, and I believe this was shown, I believe it was the ISSN, International Society of Sports Nutrition. They compared groups in terms of higher carb consumption relative to higher fat consumption. And these were, I think, near contest prep ready natural bodybuilders. And the group that had higher carbs meant that they held more muscle. They retained more muscle than the higher fat relative to the higher fat relative to carbs group. And the reason why was because they retained performance and strength more so than the higher fat relative to carbs group. So that's also something there. And then if you just want my argument in terms of like, fats versus carbs, for me, very sustainable to get into a fat loss phase. You got melons, berries, and veggies. So you get these high volume foods that can have a lot of satiety. So that's why I'm typically, Gen Pop in terms of I'm a higher carb dieter. That's what I recommend because you can fit in more melons, berries, and vegetables, which are very high in satiety to keep you feeling full. Some people do argue, anecdotally that having higher fat helps them feel fuller. And if that works for you, again, I think far and away, calories and protein are the biggest focus. If you prefer higher fat dieting, go for it. But there is some, be it small, benefit if you want to go higher carbs relative to fats. You want to hit that baseline of fat that's put your hormones in a good spot. But you really don't get a bonus by over consuming fats. But with carbs, fuels your training, you get full glycogen stores or as full as they can be in a deficit. And then also you're stimulating that insulin. So there can be a benefit there as well. So overall, great question, Greg. But as far as my reading, that's kind of why I have a bias towards, higher carbs relative to fat. And especially, Gen Pop, just dieting, trying to get leaner. Again, prioritize calories and protein. But then from there, I would go for higher carbs for the volume. Go-to post-workout meal. Right now, my go-to post-workout meal is, so me and Nicole got on this kick with, his name is Stealth Health Food. And he does these slow cooker recipes. So if you type that in, Stealth Health Foods. So actually we did like a big pasta recipe. So right now it's like pasta and like steak in it. And so it's like, it's a steak pasta. And so I've been eating that. And so that's like 40 grams of protein, 500 calories. So that's what I've been having post-workout. But typically I'll just have like some lean meat that's prepared. And then I'll just throw it on like some bread or something. I try to keep my post-workout meal very simple because that's the hours that I want to be really productive. So I will go work. I get back around 7 a.m. or I'll go work out. Get back around 7 a.m. and I just want something that I can eat very quickly. And then I want to get in here to get stuff done. But that's kind of been the post-workout meal this past week or so. What else we got? I just started taking creatine, but I'm a little unsure what exactly it does and how often I should take it. So let's get into a little bit of creatine. So what does creatine actually do? And is it worth your time, your money? Creatine. So what it does is creatine, it's going to bind to phosphate. So if you want to get like real biology on it, so it binds to a phosphate group. So creatine binds to a phosphate group. And so as we know, ATP triphosphate is the underlying energy in the cells. So what happens when ATP is used, it becomes ADP. So it becomes diphosphate. So 2. So that's what happens when ATP is used, and then it needs a phosphate group to become ATP again. So it's a useful energy source. So then creatine phosphate is going to say, hello, ADP, what's up? And then it goes to creatine, loses its phosphate, and then ADP becomes ATP again. So that, as far as like, a chemistry kind of situation, that's kind of what happens. It donates that phosphate group back to ADP to make it ATP again. But pretty much what does this mean realistically is you gain more muscle, more strength, and your muscles are going to be bigger, which is also due to the osmotic effect, which I believe osmotic means, I think osmotic is like something to do with like water and the movement of water. I think it's like you have more think it's solutes. So like water is pulled to it, something like that. So, but like pretty much again, like think of me as dumb bodybuilder. It's been very long since I did any pharmacy stuff. So Kevin, dumb bodybuilder, big muscles. Yes. So with that being said, osmotic effect, that's going to mean more water in the muscles. So that just means at baseline, you're going to have bigger muscles because you're storing water in there. So that's why a lot of people say like, hey, is that initial water weight that I gained from creatine bad? No, it's water in the muscles. And if you're lifting weights, you probably want the bigger muscles because I want bigger muscles. That's kind of what we're doing this for. All right, let me see. My boyfriend has been overworking lifting job and goes biking 15 miles each day off. Is that too much? Is he overdoing it? All he takes is protein powder and glucosamine. So again, it comes down to one of those, like every individual to some degree is different. So I would say that the human body can adapt to I can say this is my page, a shit ton. We can adapt to, like, there are some badasses in this world. Like look at CrossFitters. They're doing like 3 workouts per day, just being tanks. You got ultra marathon runners. You got people running marathons every single day. Like there are some badasses in this world. And like sometimes by us, we have such a lot of times people I think have such a big limiting belief of what we can actually like accomplish. And a lot of times we sell ourselves short and then we kind of like then be like, oh, it's okay to suck. And like, so I just want to put that out there with love. But like your boyfriend sounds like just being a badass, doing a hard labor job, getting it done. But I think the big thing here is my point is the body can adapt to handling a lot of stuff. But typically you're going to benefit from a ramp up. So if I try to go, and this could have been done, I could probably run a marathon with no training. Wouldn't be very fast. I would probably have some kind of lasting injury afterwards. But I could say I got it done. And that's kind of like just baseline for me being an athlete growing up. But I probably would hurt myself. Doing it the correct way, now I have like a 20 plus week ramp up. And I'm increasing mileage per week by like 10%. So it's kind of a smarter approach to where I can be pretty fast and be mostly injury free, knock on wood, but injuries still can happen. So with this being said, if he goes biking and he enjoys it, 15 miles each day off, I wouldn't say that he's overdoing it because then also like biking 15 miles, to me, that means the same thing as someone saying like I ran 15 miles. Did you run 15 miles at a 4-minute pace, like 4 minutes per mile? Or did you run 15 miles at a breezy pace for yourself? Like for me, I'm learning with running training is like not every mile you have to run to max exertion, just like not every set in the gym is a 1-rep max. Same thing. So if he's going biking, could be a leisure 15 miles, just enjoying the wind in his hair, just flowing in the wind. And that's cool. I'm about it. Maybe just doing it for the love of biking. But I'll say this too. I think a lot of people too, when they're like, I'm hardcore, I train in 5 days a week. I need my rest days. Like they're not, I hope not just like laying in bed, for those entire rest days. Like go for a walk, be a person, hang out with loved ones, take the dog for a walk. I'm sure that they're going to love it. I wouldn't recommend rest days have to be, all right, I gotta, 20, I just slept 10 hours and now I'm going to lay on the couch watching Netflix. Like, no, like we can handle a lot. I think there's a benefit to getting your steps in, and it's all a piece of like, what is the intensity of it? How intense is it? How hard is it? So biking 15 miles, if he's doing a 15-mile race, max exertion, it's a new stimulus. He hasn't biked before. That's where I'd be like, that's a little bit of danger zone. Like there's a potential for injury there. But if he's doing biking for the love of it at like a moderate, like reasonable pace with his capabilities, probably going to be fine. Is it too much? And that's where I would say, like, I can't say for one person what's too much. For me right now, I'm running 20 plus miles per week. I'm trying to train 5 to 6 days a week with strength training. Is that too much? A lot would say so. But see me in like probably 5 months or so, I'm probably going to be doing, 40, 50 miles a week. And that'll probably be quote unquote too much, but I'm ramping up if you do it smart. But all he takes is protein powder and glucosamine. If he's getting sufficient protein, he's putting more votes in the box that he's not going to get injured, that his body's going to be able to handle this. And I would say also glucosamine, I would say just have more protein powder, just have more complete proteins. Would that tire us out faster? Probably in terms of talking about, oh, what's going on, Zach? Would that tire us out in terms of intensity with training? Yes. Yeah. And I'm learning that with running, funny enough, in terms of intensity. If I walked 3 miles in a day, let's say this example, if you want to lose body fat and you focus on your step count, let's say you walk 5 miles in a day, so 10,000 steps. It's like, okay, I don't think I'm going to be dead tired after that, but it's going to be probably pretty tough. But I think I'd probably be energized and I'd feel fine. But if I go for a 5-mile run, I'm going to be hungry after that. I'm going to be tired after that. I'm just going to want to lay on the couch after that. And it's just because I'm condensing that time frame of the steps. And so what I'm learning too, as I've focused more on like my runs and stuff, and I called it expedited steps, but like there is a cost at that faster speed of calorie expenditure. The cost is your appetite increase seems to, from my anecdotal experience, seems to be higher. And I also just am way more fatigued and tired afterwards. So that's just something that I'm noticing for myself. Maybe people agree, maybe they disagree, but I think that it's definitely like a part of the puzzle. So same thing with the training intensity piece. Like, am I just going to be spent sooner by training very intensely? Maybe, but then is that later on volume of like where you're there's a topic of like junk volume, but I think like junk volume, if I had to assume, I think it's going to be doing a lot of sets far from failure where you're like just not doing anything great. You're like 50% of what you can do in the gym and you're doing it for multiple sets and you're just like not really doing anything well. So that's where I'd say, like, if I were a betting man, just getting stronger and being able to do more weights over time and being a stronger individual, you're going to have more muscle mass. And so that's where I would do the high intensity training and push that. But then I wouldn't go so far with the pendulum that I'm doing 1 set per muscle group. I think there's like a good middle ground, like, 5 to 10 sets per muscle group in a session, take it to failure, get stronger, beat the logbook, and that's it. So that's going to take us to the end of this episode of FlexRx. Thank you guys for hanging with me live, and I will see you guys in that next FlexRx, which should be next week. So see you guys next time. Bye.